So we're in the office of...
We're in my office. I'm Jay Schmelzer. I'm one of the program managers on the Visual Basic team.
And how long have you worked on the VB team?
Well, I've actually only been on the team for probably about 2.5 years now. I used to be a VB customer, a long time kind of VB user from basically VB 2.0 was when I first started doing some professional development up through VB 2003.
.NET.
.NET, yeah. I kind of joined the team at that point. So,
what are some of the features you've been responsible for in the good, the bad, and the ugly?
It's kind of funny. In the short time I've been here, I started out owning a lot of the Visual Basic editor and debugger. So a lot of the stuff you see in the 2005 product related to everything from code snippets, error correction, in the debugger, things like edit and continue was a big part of my life early on.
Mm-hmm.
Then kind of as the team grew and my team grew, started taking over things like some of the My Namespace, some of the Visual Basic project system, and now actually have my team also is responsible for the tool side of the Click Once deployment.
So how do you work with what they call the VS Core team? And it sounds like there's a lot of areas that you work on that's specific to VB, and then stuff that's generic to the Visual Studio shell.
Yep. So definitely a really tight partnership there, right? A lot of time spent between our offices and their offices up on the 5th floor, working out some details. So they do provide a lot of the core services that we need, and then we provide sort of that VB flavor on top of it.
So there's kind of a generic set of things that are, crossover to various languages, and then there's stuff that's VB specific.
Right. So there's, like, if you look at the editor, for example, the IntelliSense, the statement completion window, that actual window is owned by the VS Core team on the 5th floor, sort of a core service. On the VB side, we actually are responsible for populating that list and interacting with it as far as what shows, what doesn't show. So if you look at Visual Basic 2005, we have the concept of IntelliSense filtering, where we show just the most common aspects of a class or a type or members within a namespace. That's something that we specifically control on the VB side and feed that through to the
When you
service. Started
working on VB 2005 or Visual Studio 2005, what were some of the key things that were on your mind in approaching, and making better, in terms of, like, how do you define the high-level goals as a former customer or people listening to other customers?
When we talk about Visual Basic, it really is, it's all about productivity, right? And the other interesting thing, if you think about Visual Basic and its history, is Visual Basic's always been more than just a language. It's always been a lot about, an entire development experience, an entire environment around that. So it was actually pretty exciting to join the team and be responsible for a big chunk of that experience, the day-to-day experience being the editor and the debugger, and making it kind of fun to write code and interact with your applications and your projects again. So, and of course, I also got the opportunity to bring back some of those things that we'd missed from VB6, like edit and continue and design time expression evaluation, things like that. So.
And what's it like working on the VB team? Is it colorful, lively, different every week?
Colorful and lively would be a good way to put it. There's no typical day, that's for sure. It's a lot of fun, a lot of great people, definitely a lot of passion around what we do, and the people that ultimately are our customers. And I've described it to people when, especially during interview loops, stuff like that. I have to admit that when you look at the Visual Basic community, you're never going to have a set of people that really give you a lot of positive feedback when you do things well, and never have a set of people that aren't afraid to give you shoot it to you straight when you do something that doesn't make them too happy or you miss something. So it's kind of a motivating thing.
Now, you went to the PDC. What's your feel of the reaction to the features in VB 2005, and kind of take us into what you're going to show us today?
Well, so PDC, really it was PDC a couple years ago that we really started showing a lot of our 2005 stuff, and folks were really excited. There's no doubt about that. We had a room full of a couple hundred kind of diehard VB customers, and within 30 seconds of the presentation they were yelling and screaming and clapping and applauding. So that was a lot of fun, and it was really, a lot of times there's the big things like edit and continue, and then the stuff that I think we'll take a look at today is more of the little stuff, the things that you maybe didn't know were there or don't necessarily know that are there, and once you see them, you don't know how you can live without them.
And you might use them like every day almost.
Potentially every day. So we'll look at a little bit of those things. We'll look at a little bit of the customization aspect as well. One of the things we really wanted to do with 2005 was make sure that where we're doing something in the IDE, where we're doing something in an environment that to make your life easier, we want to make sure that you can also take and extend that and customize it for your own need to work with your own classes and your own types. So we'll look at some stuff mainly in the debugger where you can customize the way the debugger acts on your behalf. So
great. So
sound good?
Want to show some demos?
Sure. Let's take a look. So what we'll do is I'm running Visual Studio 2005, and what I've got here is just a really simple class library project. So what we'll do is just create a little class library, like a business component maybe, and just start seeing how some of these productivity features kind of kick in.
Great.
So I already went ahead and created the project. First thing I want to do is I want to change my class. So rather than class 1.vb, we'll just call this customer. When I hit enter, you'll notice that by changing the name of the file, we also changed the name of the class. We noticed, got a lot of feedback from customers that was a common sort of implementation pattern that people had. They wanted one class per file, and the file name would match the class name. So just sort of went ahead and took that one step further and let symbolic rename work in that environment. So if you change the file, we'll change the class if they match. Just a little thing. Let's go ahead and create this customer class. What we'll do is we'll create some properties, and if you're used to Visual Basic 2002 or 2003, you come in and let's say we want to create a property first name or something like that. First name as a string, right? In Visual Basic, you get just the generic spit for the property declaration. 2005, we decided, what, we can make that a whole lot better. We can actually let you do a little bit more with that. I think Lisa may have showed this to some folks before. So the idea is now we can have property and hit tab, and we can actually invoke a code snippet that has the full property, simple property accessor here. So I can just now go and, change this to, m_first name, hit tab, specify the type, hit tab again, and specify the name of my property, and I'm basically done. So let's go ahead and just create a couple more. We'll create another property. We'll call this one credit limit, and we'll make that a double, and we'll give it the name. Oops, let's go back here and change that. So we've got our properties. The other thing we might want to do is create a constructor so we can actually create an instance of this. So what I'll do is I'll just create a little, sub new. I'll give it a, we'll have it pass in parameters for the first name and the credit limit as double. And then we'll just go ahead and set these values. So m_first first name equals first name and credit limit equals credit limit. So now I've got my class and my properties that I can go use. So what I might want to do is actually, pretend that I had a little bit more complex logic in here. I want to see if this is actually working correctly. So I might want to go and actually test this out. Well, 2002, 2003, what would you have to do? Well, I have to go create another project, right? I have to create maybe a console application or a Windows application. I could go add a reference to this and have some context under which I could actually write some code to test this out. Well, in 2005, we brought back some functionality that existed in VB6, the concept of expression evaluation at design time. So I can just come at design time, go into the immediate window, and say something like O equals new customer, and now I can create a customer. So I can give it a name like Jay and a credit limit. Let's say I got a $125 credit limit. So I can go now I can create an instance of that customer. Now I can go actually interrogate some of those properties. So I could print first name, and we see there's the value of the first name, O.credit limit. And there's the value that we set for the actual credit limit. So kind of interesting, little productivity thing, allowing you to actually go and do a little testing of your class library without creating a bunch of additional kind of throwaway projects just as a test harness.
So the output is in the immediate window directly?
The output's in the immediate window.
Can you write to the console if you wanted to?
We could go and do things like console.writelines. We could do whatever we wanted to in here. We can execute anything. We could go in and say, let's go look at my, for example. Maybe I want to see what's going on with my. I can go to my.computer.name, right? I can just print the name of my current computer. So the idea is not only can I test things that maybe I've just written, but I can also go figure out what code I want to write, right? Maybe I want to go explore the framework a little bit. Well, I can do that right here in the immediate window without creating.
Can you re-execute something that's up in the list there? You just copy and paste?
You can. It's not quite as good as the copy-paste that we used to have in VB6. You basically have sort of the command line scroll through loops. If I hit the up arrow and down arrow, you'll see that I'm going back through
and then you can just hit enter?
The commands. Right, and I just hit enter and re-execute that command.
All right.
So let's go ahead and clear that out and give ourselves a little space. So we've got our customer class. Let's go actually do something more with it. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go create another class. And in this case, I'll just create it in the same source file. Another public class. We'll call it customer manager, and we'll just put a little public shared function on here, get customers, and we'll have that return a list using generics. We'll have return a list of customer objects. So now we can go into write a little code here. So we'll just dim customers as new list of customer. And you see here, as we're typing, especially using generics like that, the statement completion and code generation is helping me out quite a bit. We actually had a comment from a customer way early on in the product. It's actually came by way of the C# product team, where they had a C# insider customer that was working with generics and wanted to see what the experience was like in Visual Basic. So went and started typing, and I think the quote I got was something along the lines of, I started typing and I sneezed, and suddenly IntelliSense wrote all the code for me. Basically, the person was trying to get across the point that they weren't sure what the syntax was going to be, and before they even went to have to go look it up, we just took care of it for them. So trying to just help you through
what's that learning. Green line on the squiggly line?
The green squiggly. Basically, if we hover over this, what you see is we now in Visual Basic 2005 have warnings coming from the background compiler. So in this case, we're getting a warning saying we've got a function that it's not returning a value from all code paths. In this case, it's pretty obvious. We haven't written a return statement yet. All right, if I just type, return customers, we'll see that green squiggle's gone away because we're now actually returning something.
Now, the background compiling is pretty unique to VB inside the VS.
Yes, background compilation is unique to Visual Basic. It's really just the ability to, as you're writing code and developing an application, we're constantly in the background recompiling your project. So if you make a mistake, we'll give you that subtle indication, with the squiggle, be it green for a warning or blue for an actual syntax error, pretty much right away. So you get that immediate feedback. You don't have to wait and do an explicit build to find out what you did.
I assume this allows the IDE to surface up productivity features that you don't have to deal with while debugging.
Absolutely.
Like you need to fix things before you hit run.
Absolutely. You should be able to know that you can hit F5 and things are going to work because, any syntax errors would already be present for you and show up, in the IDE as you're typing them or in your error list and so forth. Mm-hmm. It also means that we can offer you a lot more accurate and timely information through things like IntelliSense, because the minute you declare a variable or add a type to your project, we know about it and we can actually add it to the list and always have it be available in the completion list when it's contextually relevant and those kind of things.
So it sounds like many more key things that were in VB6 have now surfaced up in VB 2005. Plus, if you're upgrading from a previous .NET version, you don't have to relearn anything. You just suddenly take advantage of these brand new things.
Absolutely.
It's not like you have to change what you did before or
right. A lot of this,
break bad habits, right?
Right. I mean, we reality is a lot of those things are really about helping you write the right code the first time, right? Having your code be correct from the beginning. So warnings, things like that are a great way to do that. There's a lot of different warnings. They're very configurable. You can turn them off if you don't like them. You can actually promote them to be full errors if you'd like as well. So if you wanted to, you could actually tell us that I don't even want to let the application build or compile if I'm not returning a value from a function, for example, right. Or if I've got unused variables and things like that. If you don't like those, you can actually completely turn them off and we'll never warn you about them again. The idea is it really helps you find some of those subtle problems early.
Like, as a good example, maybe if you say if and then forget the then, or these little things, like, is there some things that pop up automatically and try to help you finish?
Well, so we do have some things related to, like, some error correction type stuff. Yeah. For example, an easy one to do would be if I was to go and, create an old style property, foo, right? And then I went up here and decided, what, I actually want that to be a read-only property. So I just go in and put read-only in there. Oops. Bad example. Let's go and move that. So I have a read-only property. You notice that, we have the warning that we're not returning a value from the get, but we also have this error down here that's telling us properties declared read-only can't have a set. Well, we realized that in addition to just telling you what's wrong, we could actually start providing you some suggestions on how to actually fix it.
What do you call this pop-up or what?
We refer to this as the error correction feature. Some people refer to it as the autocorrect. It's more just, there's nothing auto about it.
Now, if you have an error like this, it will show in the error list as well.
Yep, absolutely. It would be in the error list as well. So in this case, I could go and remove that read-only specifier, or I could just remove the set, and we'll apply that change for you right there. Lots of things like this. There's, same kind of thing if you're using a type maybe that you don't have a reference for, and you need to add a reference to another assembly to get that. error correction will pop up and give you an option to actually add the reference to your project right there. Same thing for, maybe you didn't have the right level of import statements on there, those kind of things.
So for the most part, everything you're showing, or maybe will show upcoming, it relates to all versions of VB 2005, including the Express version?
Yep. This is true for all versions of Visual Basic 2005. So we've got our customer stuff here. Let's go ahead and use this collection a little bit. So let's just go ahead and say customers.add. Create a new customer. We have our first name. We have our credit limit. Now, one of the things that you notice is I'm getting the tooltip here that's telling me what these things are, but it'd be kind of nice to actually get a little bit more information. Here's actually another case where we get an error correction. If we have parameters that don't, or parentheses don't match, right? They can pick that up and recognize what we need to do. So you saw how I was getting the statement completion, but it would be nice, right, if I was going to share this class with a bunch of people, to give them a little bit more information about what these parameters and arguments were. So if I go back up to my customer class and go to my constructor, right, above my constructor I can hit, basically the 3 ticks, and now I get XML documentation in Visual Basic.
So do that one more time from a new block.
So from right here, if I hit, tick, tick, tick.
That's a
single quote, right?
Yeah, single quote.
Just 3 comment characters basically for Visual Basic, and now we get, this skeleton for an XML doc comment. I can say, I can give it some kind of summary text, and in Visual Basic I can hit Tab, and will now take you to the next part of the comment and say, the customer's name. Hit Tab again, takes me to that next location within the XML comment. Current credit limit, something like that. And so forth.
This inline XML commenting then gets translated into IntelliSense code completion type.
Yep. So basically, what will happen now is, now that I have that, and this is where you'll see the background compiler kind of kicking in. Right. If I come back down to my customer manager here and let's add, one more customer, customers.add. Now what we see is that when I go through here and say new customer, we see that I'm actually getting, my tooltip is including that descriptive text for the parameter that I had just typed in. So, customer name Ken, and let's say, Ken, we don't trust you, so we'll, give you a little bit lower credit limit. But you see, as I'm going through, I'm getting the actual live information right out of my own source code from the background compiler.
And if you compiled this class and went into a different .NET language and used it, you would get the same IntelliSense.
Yeah, what's actually happening behind the scenes is we generate a .xml file that sits right next to your assembly, and then if you go and consume this from another project in Visual Basic, another .NET language such as C#, as long as that XML file is still sitting there, they'll pick that up as well, and they'll be able to see those same comments as someone's using your class in your assembly.
And in terms of those pop-up windows that come up like error correction, there's always some developer that says, "Oh, I want those turned off." I assume when you were talking earlier about settings, these things you can tweak in terms of behavior on, off, and all that,
Absolutely.
so that someone's experience is how they want it.
Yeah, if you don't like the error correction stuff, you can turn that off. Fortunately, it's nice and subtle because it is just, you actually have to go hover over that smart tag to get it. But if you don't even want that much, you can turn that off. What's interesting is that things like XML documentation, right? This generates an XML file that can then be used to do actual documentation for your code if you want, right? Through some transforms and style sheets. You can customize this as well. So what I can do is I can actually go over here, and actually let me go to my desktop. I've got a file sitting here. Get this VB XML doc file. If I just go open this, well, we'll open it in Visual Studio because I know you're a big fan of the XML editor in Visual Studio. You see what we have is just sort of a little lightweight schema file here that basically has a code element. So it says, okay, for a class, has a section that is a template that tells us what we should generate by default, and then a section for the completion list that says what other optional elements should we make available to the person if they want to extend the template. So let's say, for example, let's go down to the procedure one. So we'll go down to sub here. And let's say that I don't like the remarks. Maybe I don't use remarks. I don't know the difference between remarks and summary. Well, I can just go ahead and remove that from my template. And we'll save that change.
You removed which element?
I removed the remarks element.
Right.
So let's go out here. Can I just take this? I need to copy this file into my documents and settings, my local documents and settings, application data, Microsoft Visual Studio 8.0. Just drop it right there in the root. And now, unfortunately, for this change to be picked up, I do need to close Visual Studio. and we'll go ahead and save this project. We'll put it in a little junk folder.
This whole behavior is similar to the code snippet XML file, where it's a metadata file that's used to drive it.
Kind of similar.
Is there some kind of add-on, XML doc editor, either by the community or something maybe that could be created?
There's certainly something that could be created by the community. We don't have anything yet.
I'm referring to the code snippet utility that we saw in Lisa's video on code snippet.
This is a different format than a code snippet, so that editor won't actually.
Oh, I know. I'm
support
just
this,
thinking something totally different, similar, that you don't have to use the XML natively if you didn't want to.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go back in. I've restarted. Let me go back into my class here and load this up. And what I'll do is I'll just take my comment out. Now if I go and hit 3 ticks again, this time you notice that when it generated the stub, it didn't generate the actual remarks tag because I took it out of my template. But if I go down here and do an open paren, we'll see that it's still included, as an optional thing down there.
So most VB developers may not necessarily tweak this, but you're just showing the extensibility and the customization there. Most people will just use the functionality as is and not have to deal with what you just showed.
Right. We hope that we've got the default right for the mass set of folks, but we definitely have heard from some of our larger customers, some of our enterprise customers, that they like to take advantage of the documentation feature to have some more sort of prescriptive or prescribed documentation for their individual methods. So they actually want the ability to add additional stuff. For the most part, they actually want to add new things to have show up by default as opposed to remove them.
Right.
And this functionality gives them that ability.
Yeah, you're showing some cool things that aren't intuitive when you first open the box and start using it.
There's pretty much
good to know.
No way you'd know about that, unfortunately. So let's go. We've gone ahead and done this. Let's go ahead and actually, go back to our immediate window. And now what we could do is, we could go in here and say, let's go, O equals, customer manager dot get customers, right? And so now again, still at design time with our class library, we actually go in and execute some code, right? In this case, I put a breakpoint, so now what we see is the ability to actually interact between design time and full debugging, right? And now I'm actually in the debugger, so I can go in and I can hover over things, right? I get my data tips, right? Which, if you haven't seen these before, the ability in 2005 to actually drill into complex values.
They're like live?
Yep, so these are like,
wow.
You just keep drilling all the way through, right? Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is, look, if we hover right in here, right, we see, by default, for a list, we see a count, then we see items, and for each item, the display is just the type, right? We got to drill in one more time to actually see what's in there. Well, it'd actually be nice and helpful for people to be able to figure out which customer they're working with at any point in time. So let's go ahead and stop, and we'll see how we can actually customize that a little bit within the debugger. So if we go up here to our customer class, I'm just going to put an attribute on my customer class called debugger display, where I can go and actually specify the default display that I want to have in the debugger for this type. So I can go in here and just say, name equals, and then we'll specify the name of our first name property. Oops. And then close that off. And now, if I go back into the immediate window and execute that again, right, we'll go back in the debugger. Now if we hover over customers this time, drill in, we still see the count, still see our items, but now when we drill into items, we see rather than the name of the type, we actually see this custom display that we specified, so we know which one's Ken and which one's me.
Now, are there a lot of elements that you can put at the top of your code to do different things that aren't intuitive?
There's quite a few things related to these attributes. This is one example.
It sounds like you're doing two things. You're doing things to make people not have to look at the help, but then giving them a whole lot of features that make them want to go look at the help to learn more about some area that's not intuitive.
Yeah, exactly.
About extending it or
so these are things that we did because we knew people wanted the ability to have finer-grained control over the way the debugger works. We did it for ourselves so that this right here, the count equals 2, right, on the generic list type. Well, list is annotated with a debugger display attribute that says we want to by default display the count, right, the number of items in the collection by default. So we basically just created that attribute for ourselves to use to make the display easier for our types, and then, of course, made it easy for people to use it themselves.
Now, is this little thing you're hovering over some kind of a control in .NET? Is it a color?
No, it's actually...
I can picture people wanting to drag and drop that onto their application.
Yeah, no, it's something specific to the debugger. Here's another little thing that you probably don't know. So if you look at this, right, if we hover over this one, we drill in and we can keep drilling in here. And so this is cool, right? We're able to actually see a lot of information, but it kind of actually obscured a little bit of my code, right? I can't actually see the code that's underneath there.
You tell me you can move it?
Well, no, but if I hit the control key,
it'll
go kind of transparent, and we can actually see the code behind it. So while it's up, we can hit the control key, and as the control key is depressed, it'll sort of make that a little bit transparent so you can see the code that's behind it. Release the control key, and it's back to where it was.
It's not hiding it completely, but it's,
Right. Now let's do something else here. Let's go and let's go ahead and stop this for a minute. And let's go in and just write some other kind of nonsense code here. We'll, dim test as string, test equals customers 0 dot first name. So let's go ahead and we'll execute our method again. Hit our breakpoint, and you see that here I am. I'm hovering over the test parameter or the test local variable. You see what it is. Well, one of the things you can do is you can actually edit values within these data tips as well. So I can go in and say edit. I can change this from Jay to Jeff.
Now that is a cool control,
right? And now.
So it's like edit continue, but inside the tooltip of the pop-up.
Right. So what would you have to do today, right? Well, what would you do in 2003? Well, in 2003, you just go in here and say, test equals Fred, right? And now you've changed the value of test.
Yeah.
But since we brought you the ability to actually get in here and see things outside the immediate window, there's no reason we couldn't actually go and allow you to make these
Now, I'm
edits as
guessing
well.
a lot of people may hover over this stuff and not realize it's editable.
I think you're right.
And unless they right-click. You wouldn't even know to right-click on a tooltip like that.
Yeah, you would have...
So what are some of the other items in that right-click drop-down?
Well, so in here you've got... you can copy the value.
Right. Copy value.
You can add it to the watch window, those kind of things.
Hex display.
The always popular hex display.
Yeah.
You also notice in here that, if you've ever seen the debugger visualizers, those are available from within here as well. So these are the richer UIs. I mean, this one's not going to be interesting. We can invoke it, though. You see that maybe we had a long string. We actually have a dialog that pops out and shows you the...
Give us the elevator line, from the first to third floor of what an XML, a visualizer is.
Visualizer?
There's some that are included, but then you can create your own.
Yep. So basically, a visualizer is the ability to, within the debugger, create a richer display for actually viewing values while under the debugger. So, for example, you see by default we have visualizers for text values, for strings, for HTML values, for XML. We have one for data set. So if you have a data set and you want to see the values of it, you can just actually use the visualizer within the debugger and it'll pop it up in a grid control and let you see the content.
Not just viewing, you can actually edit.
You can actually make edits.
And then continue.
Yep. You can update the values. And again, you can create your own visualizers. It's a little bit more involved than I'm going to show today, but it's pretty straightforward. And again, you'll just go and throw an attribute on a class to let us know that there's a visualizer associated with this type now, and we'll display it in that list for you.
Got it.
So
if it was an ADO.NET data set, you have something like...
Yep. If it was a data set, we'd have a
visualizer.
We'd have a data set visualizer that just displays it in a grid control. So that's those things. Let's do something else. Let's go back up here and look at one other thing we can do in the debugger. So in this case, we're about ready to execute this line of code, and if I hit F8 in the Visual Basic world to step, what we'll see is that, something happened that I probably didn't want, right? I'm just stepping into this very simple property, right? I don't know how many times I do this when I'm writing code. I'm stepping through a bunch of stuff, trying to figure out what it is I want to look at, and inevitably I step into properties and step out of properties, and it's a little bit annoying. Mm-hmm. Well, again, with some, let's go ahead and stop this. With some attributes, we can control that behavior as well. So I could come up here to my first name property, and in the property accessor, I can just use a debugger step through attribute, and this basically tells the debugger that we don't want to actually step into this method or this code.
These attributes are like little elements. They can be turned on and off while the code's running in a way, or is it like a one-shot deal per project? Or
well, so the attributes need to be there. They can't be. You can't add or remove these attributes while you're running under the debugger. These would be root edits in the edit and continue scenario. We can't actually apply those. But there are switches within the debugger to turn the stepping behavior on and off. So you can actually, while debugging, decide, okay, I do want to start stepping through these this time.
I get it.
So maybe you're the one creating a class and you want to step through it, but you have the attribute on it so the people consuming it don't step through it.
And leaving that code in your source code won't impact the runtime. It's only for IDE.
It's only for design time behavior. So let's, if we go back up here, right, and move our execution pointer back up there, this time if I hit F8, we'll see is we just step right over that property access. We didn't step into it because the attribute told us to avoid it. So again, for people that are building class libraries and shared code, it's a nice little way to customize the environment. And you can imagine taking this, the ability to customize snippets that I think Lisa showed a couple days ago. You can actually now go and create a snippet, your own property snippet that by default puts the debugger display attribute on there and all those other things.
Yeah.
So kind of a nice set of stuff there.
What other kind of things you got?
What other kind of stuff do we got? Well, let's go do...
How about, is there anything about docking? Is there anything new with IDE docking?
With IDE docking?
If you dock a toolbar or something, even when you drag and drop, is there some kind of...
Like this kind of docking? So like tool window kind of docking?
Yeah. It's IDE stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things you may not have seen is if you have a tool window that you pull off and you want to dock it back, we now have these docking guides that allow you to actually go and figure out where it's going to go and where it's going to be placed when it's dropped back in. So if you want to get it back down here at the bottom, you can do that. Whereas in 2003, you had to kind of, you had to kind of know, or there's a little tip that does work in 2003. If you just drag it off and just double-click, it'll pop right back to where it was. And that worked in 2002.
But while you're dragging, there's a lot of help about what's going to happen before you let go of the mouse.
Yes. A lot of other little interesting navigation features. So a lot of times you'll have a lot of source files available. There's a little arrow up here in the kind of the top right corner of the document window that allows you to switch between the open source files you have. And you can imagine if I had 30 files, that would be kind of interesting. You can also do Control Tab within the IDE, and that allows me to switch between various windows and tool windows within the development environment. Kind of like Alt Tab does for your desktop, Control Tab allows you to do that just within the IDE itself. So if you're a very keyboard-centric person, you can get around without grabbing the mouse and get to your favorite tool window.
One thing that some developers hadn't realized when they see is go up to the tab with the files and right-click, and you can split them and horizontally or vertically.
Yep, you can split
just
them.
do one of them, and then.
Yep, everybody's favorite, close all but this. If you have a lot of files open, right? You can. You just want to get back to just one. You can do that kind of stuff. Man, there's all kinds of little things in here. One of the things that you may or may not have seen yet in Visual Basic is the concept of refactoring support. So the ability to get a add-on product from one of our partners, Developer Express, has made available Refactor for Visual Basic 2005. That's a free add-on to the Visual Basic product that gives you refactoring support within the Visual Basic IDE.
So somebody said real quickly in an elevator, what's refactoring? Why do I care? How do you describe?
Well, refactoring...
The main scenario.
Well, the main thing that people think about when they think about refactoring is reorganizing and restructuring existing code, right? So you've got a lot of code. Maybe you have some, as a result of long development, you've got some methods that are a little bit unruly, some things that aren't, set up the way you'd like them. Refactoring is the ability to actually go and restructure your code without changing the behavior, without changing the execution behavior. That's traditionally what people think about refactoring. To be honest with you, the refactoring support that we have from the tool with Developer Express actually works really well when you're just writing code. It really helps you do a lot of interesting things when you're actually writing code as opposed to just restructuring code later. So, for example, let's say I create another function in here, sub bar. Takes a customer name as a string, right? And let's say it does something with that. If I want to go and actually call that, passing in, my test. Oh, let's go make that a shared. That's shared as well, so that. Sub bar. So now we can get in here, and what you'll notice is that as I'm going through code, I get these smart tags that show up. If I hover over them, this is where the refactoring tool is showing me various operations that are available. So in this case, it's showing me an inline temp refactor where it's gone and it's recognized that we have a local variable that I'm assigning to it once and using it. And we could actually just go ahead and inline that and remove that local variable completely. So if I invoke this refactoring, you see that it's removed that local variable and just passed the value directly instead.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of other interesting stuff. Everybody's favorite is the,
So what you're showing here is with the tool installed.
Is with the tool installed, yep. So I
Where do you go to get that?
That's the first thing I do every time.
Levy website? Where do you go?
You can go to MSDN.Microsoft.com, View Basic, and it's usually one of the top links there. Let me just finish my code here. You can go to the Dev Express site as well, but I would definitely go from the MSDN.Microsoft.com, View Basic. You'll find it there. There's a lot of other documentation, some walkthroughs, some videos of using the tool, things like that. So here's the other one that everybody always loves. Let's say I've created this this method, and I want to go and I realized that what I actually wanted to do is I want to reorder it. I don't want to have customer name first. I want credit limit first for some reason. Right? So I can invoke that. I can now click right click and just move that over to the right. Right? So everybody does this for a while the first time they just play with that a little bit.
The way it does it 3D rather than just instantly gives you the feel of what's happening.
And so this, I think, is a great example of where, one of the things that really attracted us to this partner was the fact that this feels like Visual Basic, right? There's no modal dialogues. There's no, preview windows, all that stuff. It's just right there in the editor. It works with you, right? The tools are making themselves available when they're contextually relevant. So you notice that, that smart tag had one operation, reorder parameter. The other one had one inline temp, right? You didn't see a full list of every refactoring that could be possible, even though most of them weren't actually going to work.
So what's a good source online for getting a nice buffet summary of all the stuff you showed, like the VB website or the blogs, and combined with some white papers? Maybe there'll be more coming out.
I definitely go to MSDN, Microsoft.com, View Basic. There's links to a bunch of this stuff up there, a bunch of articles, especially when you get into the refactoring tool. There's links off to the Visual Basic team blog. The Visual Basic IDE team's got their own blog where they talk about a lot of this stuff. Those are all great places to go find out more.
So now that, as of this recording, we're only days away from releasing VS 2005 and the new VB version, what are some of the things that you're thinking about going forward with the next version, and based on things you couldn't fit into the schedule here, or new ideas that you heard from VB developers?
Well, I mean, it's too early to really get into a lot of specifics about it, but I think it's safe to say that one of the themes that's definitely kind of front of mind for a lot of us on the team is really taking a lot of these individual things that we've got today. So things like snippets and some of this customization and stuff that we can do, and the background compiler and warnings, and if you look at Team System and its FX cop integration, and really getting those things even tighter integration of that stuff, so that now you can really fully customize the tool to your needs. So imagine that anywhere that Visual Basic generates code for you, we could associate a snippet with it, right? And you could tell us what kind of code you want to generate. When you look at tools like the Class Designer and the way you can create properties in the Class Designer, but really all you're doing is creating that property stub. You're not actually implementing the property. Well, what if we could tie a snippet to that so you could actually go create a fully functional property and create the property the way you want it, with your naming conventions, your coding conventions behind it. Your kind of design patterns, if you have design patterns you like, you can tweak the tool to teach us, right, how to implement and how to also help kind of encourage the use of your design pattern.
It does sound like you get to build on a lot of the stuff you've now done in VB 2005.
We certainly have the opportunity to build on a lot of what's in 2005.
A lot of components that could be just written in VB and customize things, and better tools and better productivity on top of what you've already got.
Yep, absolutely.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it's a lot of fun stuff.
A lot of good tips and tricks here.
We'll keep going out with more, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. Hopefully everybody will find it as much fun and productive as we do. But
okay, great. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks.
Bye.